it's not a conscious thing. I can say a lot about why, as an adult, I find biology compelling, but as a kid, I was completely fascinated with animals. I loved to watch them and think about why they did what they did.
Members of the family Felidae are obligate carnivores. All cats, from the majestic 4-nippled tiger to the 6 to 8 on average, sometimes an odd-numbered nippled domestic cat, must eat meat to survive. Despite being very good at puking up grass, they have lost the ability to digest and ferment most plant matter. However, they're very good at digesting meat and organ. Cats have evolved into exceptional hunters with exceptional sensory capabilities. However, all of this may have been driven by a lack of sense. All cats lack the ability to taste sweet. An irreversible genetic mutation in a common ancestor made their sweet receptors inoperable. So sweet and sour soup just tastes like sour soup. Cats may have become the super predators that they are because everything else just tasted like crap. There's a cheetah on the hunt, right? And she spots some prey and she's like, whatever that is looks delicious, and she starts chasing it. They try a little distraction tactic, but she's not having it, stays on after the first one, and then bang, sharp right, and the cheetah's like, holy crap, this thing can run. But now they're on a straightaway and she's like, screw this, I'm the fastest land animal. And she's right up on it, and she looks over and what the fuck? Look at her. She's like, get me out of here. And now the warthog's chasing the cheetah until the cheetah stops and says, what the hell was that? And her buddy comes over and says, what happened? And she's like, I don't know, but that thing looked like a baby elephant trying to kick its way out of a cow's face. Meanwhile, the warthog's like, suck it, cheetah. But let's back up a bit. Females in the same group will often let piglets from another mother suckle. Think Airbnb, but for nipples. What's crazy is this might result in their own biological child starving to death. It's a whole Game of Thrones thing, and the weak ones don't make it. Now, if you think that being a pig baby is hardcore, you should see the hoopla that the parents go through to make them. These are sus scroffa, the wild pigs in the lineage that gave us the domesticated ones. The females live in groups of about 3 to 5 along with their young children. The males kind of do their own thing until mating season. The mating dance of the puffin is a subtle affair. To appreciate the complexity of these movements, one must enter the mind of the puffin. Like so. Hold on. This puffin got some stuffing for your puffin muffin.
You're so good at rhyming.
Yeah, it just kind of happened.
And that developed into a very conscious passion as an adult. But I think in the same way that one is drawn to a person, I was drawn to the never-ending series of near miracles that exists across biological nature.
Well, that makes more sense. Rainforests are host to more than half of all known species, which means they can be crowded as hell. It's like those apartment buildings that kids move into after college. Everyone has like 50 roommates, all of them with dietary restrictions. And there's always one that makes way too much noise in the morning. It's sort of like that, but in the rainforest, some of your roommates want to eat you. So if you want to live there, you have to figure out how to get not eaten. Perhaps the most straightforward way of avoiding a predator is to have a hidey hole. But if you don't have a hidey hole to hide in, the next best thing is to be able to hide in plain sight. To disappear through background matching, an animal's coloration is roughly what you would get if you took a random sampling of the colors and shapes in their background. This is a form of crypsis or camouflage, and comes about from an evolutionary dance between predator and prey. If an individual winds up with a mutation that makes it harder for a predator to detect them, even when they're looking right at them, then they are more likely to make babies and pass the trait on to the next generation. Rinse and repeat. These sorts of adaptations are driven by what the predator can perceive. If your predator is colorblind, you can have little red speckles and still disappear on a gray background. If they don't see in high resolution, maybe your blotches can be a bit bigger. And likewise, creatures that we have a hard time seeing might pop out to predators who can see ultraviolet light. However, this strategy isn't perfect. Light and shadows can reveal your outline. Or that, right? I mean, sometimes you have to go, and that's good technique. You miss the guy behind him. They're free poopers. They know what they're doing. Anywho, instead of disappearing by having a seemingly random array of speckles, Animals that employ disruptive camouflage will often have neighboring patches of highly contrasting colors that would otherwise draw attention. Disruptive camouflage creates false edges that make it hard to see the true shape of an animal. And it's not just about color. Having extra body bits here and there can make it quite difficult to figure out what part of the animal you're looking at. Changes in coloration and shape can allow an animal to come into the foreground a bit, instead of just blending into a background. In masquerade, even if an animal is spotted, it has evolved to be mistaken for something inanimate. Something that wouldn't be on the predator's menu. Sticks and leaves seem to be quite popular. Listen, I'm sure it's not easy pretending to be a stick or a leaf, or the end of a log like a potu bird do. I'm just saying it doesn't feel that creative. It's like being a witch on Halloween. But if masquerade is about appearing as something uninteresting to a predator, what about pretending to be something downright unpleasant? In the rainforest, there are quite a few things that are very unpleasant for predators to try and eat. Some have very visible defenses, like thorns and spikes. I'm sorry, it's hard to take this one seriously, Your Majesty. I take it back. However, other defenses are harder to see. Many species ingest or can create toxins that taste terrible and can make a predator very sick or even very dead. I know what you're thinking. Being toxic to a predator after it's already chewing on you is not that great of a defense. Joke's on you. I bet you puke up my lifeless body in 5 minutes. Burn. Google blue jay barfing butterfly. You'll see what I mean. But even if you end up becoming predator puke, your relatives and offspring might be spared if the predator learns to avoid things that look like you. This means that for animals that have toxins, there can be an evolutionary advantage in helping the predator to learn to avoid them.
When you see a living organism, do you see it from an evolutionary biology perspective of like this entire thing that moves around in this world? Or do you see like from an engineering perspective that like first principles almost down to the physics, like the little components that build up hierarchies, that you have cells, the first proteins and cells and organs and all that kind of stuff. So do you see low level or do you see high level? Well, the human mind is a strange thing, and I think it's probably a bit like a time-sharing machine in which I have different modules. We don't know enough about biology for them to connect, right? So they exist in isolation, and I'm always aware that they do connect, but I basically have to step into a module in order to see the evolutionary dynamics of the creature and the lineage that it belongs to. I have to step into a different module to think of that lineage over a very long time scale, a different module still to understand what the mechanisms inside would have to look like to account for what we can see from the outside. And I think that probably sounds really complicated, but one of the things about being involved in a topic like biology and doing so for one, really not even just my adult life, for my whole life, is that it becomes second nature. And, when we see somebody do an amazing parkour routine or something like that, we think about what they must be doing in order to accomplish that. But of course, what they are doing is tapping into some kind of zone, right? They are in a zone in which they are in such command of their center of gravity, for example, that they know how to hurl it around a landscape so that they always land on their feet.
You are watching a master at work.
And I would just say, for anyone who hasn't found a topic on which they can develop that kind of facility, it is absolutely worthwhile. It's really something that human beings are capable of doing across a wide range of topics, many things our ancestors didn't even have access to. that flexibility of humans, that ability to repurpose our machinery for topics that are novel, means really the world is your oyster. You can figure out what your passion is, and then figure out all of the angles that one would have to pursue to really deeply understand it. And it is well worth having at least one topic like that.
You mean embracing the full adaptability of both the body and the mind? So like, because I don't know what to attribute the parkour to, like biomechanics of how our bodies can move, or is it the mind? Like how much percent-wise is it the entirety of the hierarchies of biology that we've been talking about, or is it just all the mind?
The way to think about creatures is that every creature is two things simultaneously. A creature is a machine of sorts, right? It's not a machine in the, it's I call it an aqueous machine, right? And it's run by an aqueous computer, right? So it's not identical to our technological machines, but every creature is both a machine that does things in the world sufficient to accumulate enough resources to continue surviving, to reproduce. It is also a potential. So each creature is potentially, for example, the most recent common ancestor of some future clade of creatures that will look very different from it.
But a lot can be, determined from the actual skull itself and from, what we know of its characteristics, appearance, size, and the rest of it. But to start off with, it's of huge size. I mean, roughly, I'm going to do this in inches. It's about 9 inches by 6 inches. And it's incredibly dolichocephalic. In other words, it's a very long-headed skull, basically. I mean, if you found it in any other place in the world, somebody would probably say it's artificially deformed, but it's not. It's natural. The other thing is that it has features in it that are both of modern human, in other words, Homo sapiens. So the whole shape of the face is incredibly modern looking, but it also has what they call robust or archaic features as well. And they include these huge brow ridges, basically. And as I said, the swept back head that's almost egg-like in appearance. And what else have we got? It's very wide as well. A very large opening for the nose and for the mouth. And the Chinese that started studying it, they've not done any DNA work on it at the moment, which, to be honest, is unfortunate. But what they did was they did this Bayesian study, which essentially is like a sort of prediction analysis thing, based on a whole number of other skulls of what this was. In other words, to try and determine whether it was something that we've already seen before, human, Neanderthal, Homo erectus, or whether it was something new. Well, they came to the conclusion that this was a totally unknown species that never been discovered anywhere in the world before. So they named it Homo longi, which basically just means, dragon man, essentially. And I mean, firstly, most Western paleoanthropologists have rejected this already. I mean, not as politely as they possibly can, but I mean, people like Chris Stringer at the Natural History Museum, John Holt is another paleoanthropologist. I mean, they're all kindly saying this is an incredible find, but suggesting that it is actually a new species just simply from one skull is probably a little bit premature. And all of them have essentially said this is a Denisovan. And of course, that's exciting because we already know about the Denisovans, and we also know that the chances are they were of extreme size. And this is something that I've said since I first wrote about this in 2014 in the book Path of Souls, which was authored by Greg Little, but I did contributions for that. And that basically was the first book, or the first writing anywhere that said Denisovans could be the giants of legend. And, I gave the evidence at the time.
And if a creature is very, very good at being a creature, but not very good in terms of the potential it has going forward, then that lineage will not last very long into the future, because change will throw at challenges that its descendants will not be able to meet. So the thing about humans is we are a generalist platform, and we have the ability to swap out our software to exist in many, many different niches. And I was once watching an interview with this British group of parkour experts who were being, they were discussing what it is they do and how it works. And what they essentially said is, look, you're tapping into deep monkey stuff. Right? And I thought, yeah, that's about right. And, anybody who is proficient at something like skiing or skateboarding, has the experience of flying down the hill on skis, for example, bouncing from the top of one mogul to the next. And if you really pay attention, you will discover that your conscious mind is actually a spectator. It's there. It's involved in the experience, but it's not driving. Some part of you knows how to ski, and it's not the part of you that knows how to think. And I would just say that what accounts for this flexibility in humans is the ability to bootstrap a new software program and then drive it into the unconscious layer where it can be applied very rapidly.
I know Kung Fu.
Show me. This is a sparring program, similar to the programmed reality of the Matrix. It has the same basic rules like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken. Understand? And hit if you can.
Certain kind of magic. You're right. With the consciousness being an observer, when you play guitar, for example, or piano for me, music, when you get truly lost in it, I don't know what the heck is responsible for the flow of the music, the loudness of the music going up and down, the timing, the intricate, like even the mistakes, all those things. That doesn't seem to be the conscious mind.
The blues. It may be hard, baby. Sleeping and call your Betty. Every make your bed hard, baby. Sleeping and call your Betty. You know the blues just a funny thing. People call it a mighty bad disease.
It is just observing, and yet it's somehow intricately involved. More like, because you mentioned parkour, dance is like that too. When you start, I've been tango dancing. When you truly lose yourself in it, then it's just like you're an observer. And how the hell is the body able to do that? And not only that, it's the physical motion is also creating the emotion, the damn, it's good to be alive feeling. So, but then that's also intricately connected to the full biology stack that we're operating in. And yet the fundamental aspect of what it means to be human is that process of figuring out, of making mistakes. And then there's something about overcoming those challenges and the mistakes and like figuring out how to lose yourself in the magic of the dancing.
Try to be as peaceful as I can. If she'd go to moving around like this, I might work with her hind, work with her front, and when she gets quiet right in the middle, then I'd release her. All of these things help you to get your horse with you and organized to where they can find a place to get content right there between your reins and legs. Now, I often tell people, when you can center a horse and you can make it pleasing for the horse to be centered and organized and with you, then you don't have a lot to fear about horses because it's your rectangle. You can take it wherever you want. And you'll be a little busier, maybe on a green horse, you'll be a little busier. You have a little more of a job to do. Now we'll take her the other way backwards. You just give her a little job to do when she feels like she needs to move her feet. But I determine where those feet go. Then maybe I'd walk that front end around the hind end. Then I'd take her backwards. And I might take her forward. Ask her to get soft and get stopped. If she thought she could be content there, right in the center, well, I'd leave her be. If she thought she couldn't stay too long, then I'd give her a little job to do. And first thing you know, she's in the center of my rectangle, and that's where she lives. The older they get, the more experience they get, the less work you have in centering your horse, because that's where they find the most peace. But you don't want to drill on the horse or train on him. You get aware of the horse. You treat the horse like he is your legs. Well, your legs shouldn't be doing anything that you didn't ask them to do. So maybe that'll give you something to think about as far as how you might ride that colt. You always have a plan, see?
Or just movement is what it means to be human.